I know, I'm over a year late to review the Honda Civic Type-R. Unfortunately, I never got an invite from Honda to take this car out on a racetrack with Red Bull F1 driver Sergio Perez, or former Red Bull F1 driver, depending on when you're watching this video. And also, Honda never added this car to their media press fleet last year. Thankfully, this year, they did add it to their media press fleet and I finally have my hands on it. So is this car as good as everyone says that it is? Let's go for a drive and find out. So this new Honda Civic Type-R has the same engine as the previous generation. Well, not exactly the same. Honda's engineers did mess around with the internals a bit, but it still is 2 liters, turbocharged, 4 cylinders, and it does develop a little bit more power. 315 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour really depends on how much wheel spin you get and how quickly you can change gears, but it should be somewhere in the 5-second range. Down low, this engine doesn't really have much punch. It's only once the RPM needle gets around 2000 does the turbocharger actually start to spool up, and by the time you're at 2500, that's when you get the full torque. But once you do get into those higher RPMs, this engine pulls hard, and it is relentless all the way up to the 7000 RPM redline. Unfortunately, it doesn't really make that much noise. Honda does say that they've tuned the exhaust to make it a little bit louder than the previous generation, but in all honesty, it sounds exactly the same, which is not very loud. However, they did make it louder in here, and that's because the exhaust noise and the engine noise is enhanced by the stereo system. Thankfully, this new Civic Type-R has not been diluted by modern day standards and given an automatic transmission. It still has a good old-fashioned 6-speed manual. This is a slick shifting transmission with a very satisfying click every time that you put it into the next gear. It also has active rev match, which means that it'll blip the engine whenever you downshift to the appropriate RPMs to make it easier and smoother to release the clutch. Speaking of which, the clutch actually feels really good under your left leg. It is a little bit heavier than the one in the Civic Si, but it's not so heavy that it'll tire you out whenever you're commuting with this car on a daily basis. You can very easily feel the bite point, but I have noticed that when you're setting off from a stop on an incline, it can be just a little bit tricky to slip the clutch without over-revving the engine. However, with time, I'm sure that'll be an easy thing to master. As for fuel economy, it's rated for 10.8 liters per 100 kilometers in a city and 8.3 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway. Of course, it takes premium fuel only, but the fuel economy is actually not that bad. I've been averaging 9.9 liters per 100 kilometers. And that's roughly the same as what I was averaging when I drove the Acura Integra Type-S. I think I averaged about 10.1 liters per 100 kilometers if I remember correctly, so pretty easy to achieve what it's rated for. The Honda Civic Type-R made its name by the way it drives around corners. It is a front-wheel drive car, but it doesn't have the excessive understeer or torque steer of hot hatches from yesteryears. The limited slip differential and clever suspension geometry quell torque steer and reduce understeer to give the car a responsive and controllable front end. The 300 plus horsepower of the engine does overwhelm the tires in first gear, but once it's in second gear, there's no hint of tire squeal as the car exits a corner. Additionally, the back end is stable as the car drives over bumps midway through corners. The adaptive dampers in the stiffest plus R mode make the Civic Type-R almost feel like a race car in the British Touring Car Championship. It is stiff with almost no body roll even through the fastest of corners. If you do find yourself driving over rougher roads but still want the responsiveness of the plus R drive mode, the Civic Type-R has an individual drive mode. This allows the driver to adjust various aspects of this car to their liking. Providing the bulk of the stopping force are Brembo 4-piston front calipers and 13.8-inch two-piece rotors. The rear discs measure 12 inches in diameter and are clamped down by regular single-piston floating calipers. These brakes provide plenty of stopping force in everyday traffic with a firm but easy to modulate brake pedal. Under harder braking applications, the car stops on a dime with the aid of the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires, and it will feel in control at all times. For sheer driving pleasure, the Honda Civic Type-R delivers the most for the cost of this car. Just like the previous generation Honda Civic Type-R, this new Civic Type-R is really loud on the inside when you're just cruising on highways. Here's what it sounds like in here without any sort of audio enhancements. It's pretty loud, right? And as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, a lot of the engine and exhaust noise is fake. It's being enhanced by the stereo system, so you don't really hear it out the back all that much. But at least when it comes to comfort, the adaptive dampers do a great job in comfort mode. Yes, it is a little bit more jiggly than a Honda Civic Touring, but the ride is more than bearable on long commutes or just long highway trips. If you switch the dampers into plus R mode, then of course the ride does become much stiffer. It's not so bad that it'll rattle your teeth or anything like that, but you will want to avoid some of the more poorly maintained streets around your area. It's definitely best to use the plus R mode when you're on a racetrack or on freshly paved tarmac. Inside the Honda Civic Type-R, it looks the same as pretty much every other Civic with a few exceptions. The most obvious being these two front seats. They are very plush and have a lot of padding, so they provide lots of comfort even when you take this car on long road trips. The bolsters do a great job of keeping you in them, and thankfully these seats are not wrapped in leather, so you don't slide around in them, and also they don't burn your back on hot summer days. But what will burn your hand at least is the metal shifter. These past few days it's been really hot, which made it very difficult to change gears because this shifter was burning as soon as you touched it. And I would assume it's the exact opposite during the winter months when you leave your car overnight in near zero and sub-zero temperatures. This shifter probably gets really cold. But at least it's really nice to the touch once it does cool off or warm up, depending on the time of the season. The other change in this Type-R are the carpets. The red looks really nice, but because it is a brighter color instead of the traditional black, it does mean that it highlights dirt a lot easier. So if you want to keep them pristine, you do need to clean them out more often. But otherwise, as I said, the rest of this interior is very familiar to other Civics. You get the same climate controls, the same infotainment touchscreen with the same infotainment system. You get the same steering wheel, the same digital driver instrumentation, just as the Civic Si, and shift lights as well. So a very familiar place. And in terms of interior space, for my 6'4" height, plenty of legroom, plenty of headroom. I can even wear a helmet in here when I'm on a track day. No issues whatsoever. So with that, let's go check out the back seats now. Because this is the biggest Civic to date, it means that there is a lot of space in these back seats, especially for somebody as tall as me behind my tall driving position. So yes, my knees are touching the back of the front seat, but they don't feel squished at all. I also have plenty of space for my feet. However, headroom is a bit more limited. My hair is brushing up against the headliner, but it's not too bad. Back here, you only do get 2 seats instead of the traditional 3, with cup holders occupying the space in between these outer seats. And you don't really have much to do back here because there's no air vents, there's no separate climate zone, you don't get heated seats. All that you can do is hold on tight while the driver drives enthusiastically through some twisting and winding mountain roads. Behind the seats, the Civic Type-R has 696 liters of cargo space and 1,204 liters when the rear seats are folded. There is a little bit of a step between the trunk floor and the bottom of the backrest, but at least there is no strut tower brace to impede items like there is in the Acura TLX Type-S, for example. Also, because this is a sports car, it does not come with a spare wheel under the trunk floor. The 2024 Honda Civic Type-R is not cheap, but it is a little bit less expensive than its sister, the Acura Integra Type-S. It will cost you $51,330 Canadian, with the only options being the paint and any accessories that you may want to add onto it. The problem that you will most likely encounter is low inventory and dealership markups. Over a year after this car came to market, it still is hard to get your hands on one, let alone for the MSRP. When it comes to gadgets, unlike other $50,000 vehicles, you're not paying for the convenience features in the Civic Type-R. For example, it does not have heated seats, a heated steering wheel, or a power sunroof. This car just has the basic convenience features, which include dual-zone automatic climate control, a backup camera, built-in navigation system, wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto connectivity, push-button start, keyless entry, and power windows. The only premium feature it has, if you can even call it that these days, is a wireless phone charging pad. The infotainment system is displayed on a 9-inch touchscreen, and it is the same one that is found in other versions of the Honda Civic. The only addition which this Type-R receives is the Log R page. This is a data logging app which allows the driver to view different parameters and performance features of the car, from oil temperature to boost gauge, G-meter, and even yaw rate, among many others. The app can store lap times and also keep scores on the driving performance. You can also connect a smartphone and keep track of all your previous performance data and then compare it against new data whenever you revisit the same racetrack. On the outside, Honda gave the Type-R a wider stance, a rear wing which actually does not impede rear visibility, and functional hood vent along with 19-inch wheels. I think that the regular Civic and Civic Si are a little bit bland to look at, but the Type-R has just enough bits and bobs attached to it to make it look much more interesting. In the end, the Honda Civic Type-R really is as good as everyone says that it is. The question now is, this or the Acura Integra Type-S? Last year, the Integra Type-S was my car of the year. So can the CTR do the same for this year? Well, hopefully you will subscribe to this channel and watch my year in review video at the end of this year to find out. In the meantime, if you would like to know more about this 2024 Honda Civic Type-R, I have a written review with a few more details about it over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up here. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck, or most likely it'll be an SUV next time. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you in the next one.